everyone, and welcome back to Comic Book Issues. It's time for another one of our vlog reviews. This time I'm reviewing Shazam! Didn't look like it was going to rain today anyway. And warning, the S in Shazam stands for spoilers, not Solomon. Well, I really liked this movie, and for comparison, yes, I liked it more than I liked Captain Marvel. This is a very family-friendly superhero film, and most films are aimed at like the teenage, young 20 audience, but this is a film you can take your whole family to. It's got a good message, even though it does kind of beat you over the head with it a little bit. Shazam is just a lot of fun, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's got a great cast, it's got a great story, great special effects, but it's not perfect. So let's get to it. Let me dive right in, starting with Zachary Levi, who of course plays Shazam. Now, unfortunately, Zachary Levi probably has the least important part in this movie, in that Shazam is kind of just like a special effect that drives the story. He doesn't have a lot of dramatic moments. He's mostly there for Billy to have fun as. And in fact, one of the problems I had, it feels like there's a big disconnect between the character of Billy Batson and Shazam. It feels like when he is Shazam, he's not acting like Billy Batson. He's acting like an adult acting like a kid, if you understand what I'm saying. Like there's that scene cut, he's doing a floss dance. Like I couldn't really see Billy doing the floss dance when he was a normal kid. He's not that physically comedic when he's a child, but since he's now in this big suit, he's acting like a kid. And that does make sense to a point. He's got all this seriousness and responsibility on his shoulders throughout the movie, so when he becomes Shazam, it's a kind of a chance for him to let loose, but it just never really felt 100% that Shazam was Billy Batson just in an adult's body. It didn't quite mesh up as much as I would have liked. That's a minor nitpick, however. Going back to what I was saying about Levi's performance, unfortunately, he's mostly there for the humor, or he acts over the top scared when the monsters and villains show up. There's a point where he gets kind of grim, firm-jawed determination, like, and he gets serious, but there's no real dramatic moments for Levi to work with, at least in this film. He's just an escape for Billy, and as such, he's not a very serious character. He kind of becomes a little more serious at the end and takes some responsibility, and that's a good thing, but for this first film, it's not a bad performance at all, but he just doesn't get to do much with the character. All the dramatic stuff relies on Billy, not Shazam. And also that kind of the fake muscle suit thing got a little distracting after a while. You know, maybe Levi just needs to bulk up before the next one. And speaking of all the important stuff falling on Billy, Billy Batson was played by Angel Asher. All the dramatic stuff of the last two-thirds of the movie kind of focus on Billy. I'll get to the first third in a bit. But it's all about him trying to find his mom. And when he finally does, and he realizes that he was kind of looking through his past with rose-colored glasses, he was kind of imagining this happy childhood when it was really a lot more stressful and unhappy than he remembered. It's heartbreaking when he finds his mom and he finds out that his mother just cracked under pressure and left him. It breaks your heart a little bit. In the comic books, I should say that they're going with the Billy Batson Shazam origin from the New 52, which they've kept into the Rebirth era of DC Comics. And I'm glad that they didn't make Billy as obnoxious and angry as he was in the origin comic book. Because in that one, he was thoroughly unlikable. He kind of redeems himself by the end. But in this one, he's just a little more standoffish, not willing to connect with his new foster family. Whereas in the comic, he was just like pushing them all away to the point where he like makes Starla cry in one of the comics. I'm like, well, he upsets her, but he never like is mean or cruel to her. So there's that aspect. They lined him up for the movie, which is good, because it would have been hard to root for Billy if he'd been as angry and as bitter as he was in the newer origin comic book. I guess the message of this movie is that family is where you can find it, and it kind of beats you over the head with it, especially when that scene, it's a very emotional scene when his mother kind of rejects him, or he finds out that she just chose to leave him. And we don't know what happened to Billy's parents in the comic books, and that was always kind of okay. It was like what happened to all the wives of 60s sitcom stars, Jed Clampett and Andy Griffith. They didn't have their wives, and we didn't really need to know where they were. Just like in the older comics, we didn't really need to know where this orphan boy's parents were. But you could just stretch it out over a comic book. But here in a movie, the audience is going to want resolution. They're going to want to know what happened to Billy's mom. So you have to give that to them. Otherwise, they'd be like, why did they never resolve that? You know, you'd have a lot of audiences upset if they didn't find out what happened to Billy's mother. So we find out, and it's heartbreaking. I don't necessarily think it's necessary for the character, but I understand that it was a concession for the movie format and the needs of audiences to get all their answers in kind of one standalone story. If they don't know for sure that there's going to be a sequel, you got to put all the answers there in the first one. Freddy, played by Jordan Dylan Grazer, is kind of the breakout character of this movie. He's probably the one I like the most. In the comic, again, he was kind of a street-smart hustler on crutches. Here, he's that kid who's just a little too obsessed about his one thing, which is superheroes. And it kind of alienates him from the more well-rounded kids or the more popular kids. And you can tell that there's a kind of a need to get attention, which he, in fact, describes to Billy that this is the reason why I do this, why I make up these lies, why I'm obsessed with superheroes. I want people to pay attention to me. The disability has led to a kind of inferiority complex that he overcompensates for. And yes, we all knew kids who were obsessed too much with one thing, like comic books. I mean, not me, though. They loved me in high school. They loved me. Anyway, Jordan was really great as Freddy. He was very funny. The best scenes with Shazam are when he's with Freddy and they're kind of pulling this double team act where they're trying to hustle people, trying to teach him how to use his powers. But I love how Grazer plays Freddy as kind of a smartass, but there's also anger, there's also jealousy. He'd love to have these powers. He's obsessed with superpowers, yet this kid who moves in doesn't care about superheroes, gets these powers instead of him, so there's jealousy there. And it all comes down to that one scene where he said, yes, of course I love these powers. Again, they write him like a real-life teenager. He's a little obnoxious. And my hat's off to Jordan Grazer, the screenwriter, for that. He doesn't fill the screen with unbelievably smart, intelligent, precocious kids, wise beyond their years. He writes them as real children. Some are cute, some are smart, some are quiet, some are sullen, some are a little too into their own thing, some are a little too obsessed with their future. They run the gamut, but they're not all, oh, I figured it out when the adults didn't. I would have hated that. So the kids feel real. Speaking of the kids, probably one of my few, again, I liked most of this movie, but there were a few things that didn't work. Why is the Asian kid got to be the brilliant hacker? That felt a little stereotyping there. But also Mary, I wish they'd done a little more with her instead of she's just kind of obsessed with trying to get into college, and when she does, she's not sure she can leave the first family she ever had. And I wish she'd been a little more of like the caretaker of the family in the comic book. I wish they'd done a little more with her because Mary Marvel is like one of the big three of the original Marvels. You know, Captain Marvel Jr., Mary Marvel. So I wish they'd done a little more with her. But probably my favorite scene involves the kids, and that's when they all get their powers. Because I wasn't sure they were going to go that route. It does happen in the origin story in the comic book. But you never know. Are they going to introduce a whole half dozen superheroes in the first movie, or wait, make Shazam the only hero and then bring the family in later? But they did go that route. They brought the family in. Everyone gets their superpowers, and that was just like, that was a great moment. People were applauding. I had a huge smile on my face when you see the entire family Shazammed up. And it's just a great moment because that's the moment they're united, they're family finally. Not just because of these powers, but because the kids are going to stand with Billy against this evil man and his army of demons. So that was a great moment. It'll probably go down as one of the great moments of the DC Cinematic Universe, the powering of the Shazam family. Playing a new villain role is Mark Strong as Thaddeus Savannah. He was Sinestro in the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern film. There's not a lot to that character, but I mentioned the first third of the story where the drama was, and that was with young Savannah, played by Ethan Peugeot, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, was really good. He's kind of got all the drama, because the opening of the movie focuses on him and being denied the powers by the wizard, but tempted by the sins. You get to see, he and Billy are essentially the same, except where Billy was kind of ignorant of his mother's true feelings towards him. Thaddeus knows that his father doesn't like him. He knows his brother doesn't like him. And just a generally unhappy child. Everyone kind of looks down on him. I mean, his brother mocks him as not being a man, and his dad laughs at that. Like, Jesus. I mean, you know, it's just, he's had some, this is someone desperate for approval. For a moment, this magical wizard, like, is off doing a Harry Potter, you know, here's everything you ever wanted. Like, no, you can't have it. And that just creates this fires up his inferiority complex to the point where he spends the rest of his life looking for that wizard and how to try and get back into that cave, to the point where he spends the rest of his life looking to get back into that cave and take what he wants. And of course, Shazam recognizes that in that kind of final battle. He says, we're the same, we're both looking to fill this void in ourselves. Mark Strong plays scary and intense very well. I mean, it was kind of almost like a serial killer vibe to him when he confronts his family and kills them off. But then the story comes about him killing Shazam so Shazam can't take what he's put into himself to fill that void that I mentioned. And that's as good a motive as anyone. He isn't really the Savannah from any of the comics that we know. Savannah was like a short mad scientist. And I'd love to see going forward at some point to do like a science versus magic theme, which was always kind of a big part of Savannah versus Captain Marvel stories, Shazam stories. But here he's kind of like a Black Adam surrogate, and hopefully we do get Black Adam down the line. Dwayne Johnson was an executive producer on this film, so hopefully we'll get there. I don't have too much to say about the wizard Shazam, played by Djimon Hounsou. He was excellent. He's larger than life, and that kind of sells that magic is this big, mad, uncontrollable force in the DC universe. He's kind of this, Billy, look at me, Billy! So that performance just kind of subtly sells what magic is going to be to you, even if you don't really recognize it at the time. Now, one of my few complaints about the movie pertains to its humorous tone. Frankly, the whole street performer superhero thing kind of went on too long. Oh, look, he wound up in a strip club. Oh, look, he jumped and hit a building. You know, he doesn't know how to do his powers. Like, oh, guys, okay, we get it. You don't know what you're doing. You're kids. You're conning people. Fine. But, you know, the very first third of the movie is all very Savannah intense. And it felt like we jumped through a lot to get him powered up before Billy gets there. I kind of wish Billy had gotten his powers, then Savannah had stolen the eye, just to spread it out a little more evenly. One of the really great things about this movie, though, was the special effects. The sins are fantastic. They're very intense, scary monsters. And as I said, I think this is a very good film for families to see, and I think kids like to be scared. As long as they know there's a superhero who's going to beat these monsters up, it's okay to have intense, scary creatures, so long as they know the good guys are going to win. And these were very intense, scary creatures. Are just this side of being a little too terrifying. But they didn't look over CGI. The CGI here was perfect. It was really well done. The special effects were really well done. It never felt too digital, except maybe a couple times when Shazam was flying. Also, on a general note, this was kind of a running gag in the movie that they didn't know what to call him. They kept coming up with all these names like Mr. Sparklehands or Thundercrack. It's because you can't call him Captain Marvel anymore. But DC really needs to find a new name for those characters. I kept wanting to call Mary Marvel or Freddy Captain Marvel Jr. or Shazam Captain Marvel, but you can't call them the Marvel family anymore because they lost the rights to Marvel Company. So they need a new name just so we have something to call them, because obviously they can't. Hi, I'm Shazam. Oh, I'm a kid again. You know, you can't have them use Shazam as their code names. So I would like to see DC apply a new superhero family name to that group. At least in the comics, it can work its way into the movies then after that. It's just kind of a logistics thing. Also, even without Henry Cavill, the Superman ending was hilarious. I got a huge laugh. And the mid-credit scene, the final credit thing where they're making fun of Aquaman, okay, but the mid-credit scene, we've seen Mr. Mind, then we see he's gone, then at the end he comes out and he has his little box on and he's talking. Mr. Mind is one of my favorite DC villains, so I'm thrilled he showed up in the mid-credit scene. Let's bring him in for Shazam 2. Black Adam can wait. I like Mr. Mind. He's an evil caterpillar, folks. You're not going to do better than that. Okay, to sum it up, this is a very fun movie. I really enjoyed myself. It's probably my favorite DC movie to date. The tone is a little inconsistent, but that's not a big deal. And I think this is a great family film if you want to go take your family to see a superhero movie. And that's it, my friends. Until next time, this has been Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, Brian Hines, the Last Angry Geek.